Hello. If you're like me, growing vegetables at home in buckets or bags, your soil is key. As the year progresses and you harvest vegetables from your buckets and bags, you're left with more and more soil. Question is, what are you going to do with all that soil? The video that I'm going to cut you to now was shot several years ago, and I'm still growing in the same soil today. Watch the video, then come back to me. Hello, this video is about soil management and how I prepare the soil to grow vegetables in buckets and pots. These are some of my buckets. They don't normally stand where they are today. I've actually brought them out so you can get a better look at them. These are normally stacked just like this in the corner of the garden. Okay, hello Mike. Hello sweetheart, hey come round here. Good girl. Here. Okay, so these are normally stacked in the corner of the garden. And this all starts at the end of the growing season. So these buckets, the soil in these buckets will have grown potatoes or carrots or onions or leeks or beetroot or green onions. This soil could have grown any of those vegetables in the summer of this year. And when I harvested those vegetables, I was left with the vegetables obviously, which went indoors and we eat those. We're left with these buckets. They were now empty and the soil was in the barrow. That soil's got to go somewhere, hasn't it? And we're not going to use it for another 4, 5, 6 months, are we? It's the summer. We've just harvested the crops. There's nothing else to go in the buckets in that soil because pretty soon we're going to move into autumn and through into winter. So that soil has done its duty in that particular growing year. So we put the soil back in the buckets. Now because we know that soil is going to be used the following spring, then we know that there are going to be a couple of months, 3 months perhaps, the soil will sit in this bucket doing nothing. So hey, let's work on it. Why don't we work on it? Why don't we try and make this soil better? Why don't we try and put something back that the last crop took out so that in the spring of next year we can grow in the same soil again. We don't have to keep replacing soil. We don't have to keep buying compost. We just reinvigorate the soil we've got. And if you're a follower of mine, you know how I do that, don't you? If you're a follower of mine, you know how I do that. It's chop and drop. It's seaweed and leaves. So what we've got on these buckets of soil now is a chop and drop of seaweed and leaves that went on perhaps a month or so after I harvested the potatoes and carrots, maybe even 2 months later, because I waited to autumn before I collected the seaweed, because as I've told you, it's always wise to collect seaweed as the weather gets cold. There are no sandhoppers, there are no flies, and there are no smell. So we don't collect in summer. We just put the soil back in the pot, eat the vegetables, wait for autumn to arrive. Autumn has now arrived. We collect the seaweed, we collect some leaves, we chop it and drop it on this soil in these buckets. Check this out. Now before I show you this, This chop and drop was way higher than the top rim of these buckets when I put it on, way higher. I hope you can see now it's way lower. Now that isn't because it's decomposed and broken down, that process is going on, but the rain has pushed it down because I don't cover these. And when the frost comes, the frost will break it up. When the snow comes, the snow will push it down. And in these buckets, in this soil, will be worms. They eat this stuff. And what goes in the front comes out the back, and what comes out the back stays in the soil, and the soil is just getting better and better and better. If you're growing in buckets, if you're growing in pots, you should be doing this. Now, if you can't get hold of some seaweed because you don't live near the coast, then what I would suggest you do is go with leaves and grass. Do a chop and drop of leaves and grass and put that on top. There are a number of things you can use. This is my preferred chop and drop, seaweed and leaves, and there is some grass in there. You might just be able to recognise it, perhaps not, but there is some grass in there as well. So this will now sit through the rest of autumn, it will sit through winter, it will be just about ready to go early spring, and at some point when the weather picks up in spring and we want to plant things in these buckets, we'll turn the bucket out into a barrow, we'll incorporate anything that's left into that soil, and depending on what we're growing, say for example potatoes, we might add a slack handful of potato fertiliser. Then it all goes back in the bucket and we start again. So we're not buying compost year in, year out. We're just using the same soil year after year, and it works, provided you look after your soil, provided you manage your soil. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is Homegrown Veg, signing out. Did you enjoy that? I'll put a link on this table to my smallest compost pile in the world video. It's well worth a watch. And I'll give you a link in the text below.